Welcome to Firsts in Fiction, your first stop for learning to write better fiction. I'm Steve McLean, an aspiring writer.
I'm Aaron Gansky, author of The Bargain, The Hand of Adonai series, and Firsts in Fiction.
I'm Heather Luby, the managing editor of the Citron Review.
And today with us we have Andrew Penebianco, right? Penebianco?
Penebianco, you got it, yeah.
Right, okay. So I actually went to YouTube and found a pronunciation key so that I could figure out how to pronounce that.
There actually is a pronunciation key on YouTube.
There is?
On my last day. I happened to find it just the other day. It's really delightful.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. It will be in the video description.
Good.
On YouTube, so just helping out other YouTubers here.
That's great.
So,
Nice.
I'm going to put a link to it on my business card.
Yeah. Okay, there you go. So today we're going to be talking about Kurt Vonnegut's 8 Rules for Creative Writing, which was one of our most popular episodes that we've ever done in the past, and it just so happens that that was the worst audio quality we've ever had. So now we're going to, we just had our mixer die, so hopefully the audio quality isn't terrible when we actually record this from YouTube. So,
Yeah, I know. It's something about Kurt Vonnegut, I guess.
Right, yeah. At least there's not, I hope there's not going to be a barking dog in the background this time.
Man.
But yeah, let's just take a moment before we get into this to talk to you a little bit, Andrew. Andrew, you are a writer.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about yourself.
A little bit about myself. Okay, well, I got my MFA in creative nonfiction from Antioch University. Aaron and I actually figured this out 5 years ago. I am, I suppose, an aspiring essayist. In the meantime, I work in advertising, and so I find cute ways of saying an old idea new. And I also am currently working on, actually yesterday I made my 201st invented word. I am working on a dictionary of invented definitions and invented terms for things that I just notice in my day-to-day.
Very, very cool.
Thank you.
Something that I'm going to tell you to do is add your website to your lower third there. I got to say, so you have 2 websites, right? You've got you've got 2 websites. I didn't actually write this down. One of them is, it looks like a dictionary. The other one looks like a and it's on Tumblr.
Oh, well, all right. So yes, I had originally started the website that I have now. I'm notoriously terrible at the internet. Which is why I'm I'm much more kind of like Dr. Johnson in terms of my interests than anything 21st century. But I have a website which is wordsthatAren't.com, and the Tumblr was actually something else entirely. It was called neologasming.com, but no one knew what that even meant. So that was just bad branding on my part.
What's funny is no one knew what it meant, but if you go to the site, it tells you right at the very top what it means.
It does. Yeah, it was just, I had to make it up. I had to come up with a name for it, and I was like, oh, I got a word that's like that. So I put that word in. I will say, though, that there is a wordsthatAren't.tumblr.com, which is not mine.
Oh.
And I recommend you not go, because the person who runs wordsthatAren't.tumblr.com has a bunch of like animated GIFs of sex. So
wow.
It has nothing to do with me. But yeah,
sure.
Wow.
It's me. It's all me. It's all me.
Okay. Yeah. So I saw that you made Geek of the Week with Geekadelphia.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
It was really cool. It's nice to be alive today when being a geek actually can, get you positive attention. Like, I've been a geek, I suppose, long enough for when it was actually kind of socially a bit dangerous. But now geeks are in. Michael Cera, I suppose, helped make that possible. So now being a skinny, awkward geek can get you girls.
Yeah.
But
actually, I saw a thing going around Facebook the other day that was saying something along the lines of, "Ladies, go for the geeks," and it gave you this long list of reasons why you should go for the geeks. And I really appreciated it and kind of wished that had been around while I was in high school.
Right?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
So,
I completely agree.
So something else I know about you is before you were in advertising, you were a teacher at St. Joseph's University?
Yep, St. Joe's.
Right.
Yeah, I was a roving professor of humanities throughout the Philadelphia area. So I taught at St. Joe's, I taught at Holy Family University, I taught at a couple of community colleges, and if there was ever anything that needed teaching that was in it that would make you interesting in a cocktail party, I probably taught it. I taught semantics, I taught mythology, and I really, frankly, I had no right teaching mythology, but I don't. I have no right.
As long as you can make it up, right? I mean,
oh, no, totally. Like, I've read Edith Hamilton, but then that's what I did. I read Edith Hamilton for money, but it was actually pretty cool, and my students were a really wide range of ages, and everybody was there for one reason, and that was to get college credit. And so it made it very easy. So
I got to say, I don't think, based on reading all of the reviews about you, that they were just there for college credits. For instance, I see one review that says, Professor Panabianco is hot.
Oh, no.
Funny, helpful, nice, and down to earth. And then it goes on to talk about you're a really nice grader.
Yeah.
It's hard to get a C on anything. And then at the very end it says take him / date him.
Date him. Yeah.
Right, yeah.
My girlfriend's was really pleased with that one. She kept talking about making a T-shirt for me that says take him, and on the back it says date him.
That's a good idea.
That was always really I'm bashful. That was really funny to find. Again, I taught mostly 19, 20-year-old students, and I suppose they're young. They haven't heard my shtick before. Yeah. So and at the time I was ridiculous. Like I had so many different corduroy blazers. I had a ponytail. I wore slippers to class. I was really playing the role of like the funky English teacher, and really I was just 30 years old.
I gotta say, your worst review said something similar even. It says, least favorite professor I've ever had. Obviously, it's your worst review. But then it says, every positive comment is from a girl. The only reason why girls like him because they think he's funny and cute. I don't know.
Well, that's a good reason to like. There's a good reason to like somebody. But who was that? Who put that down there?
Those are dumb reasons to like a guy.
Oh man, I gotta
he's
say.
So funny and smart and nice. God, where's all the love for the jerk troglodytes out there?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So
well spelled troglodytes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any
Right.
outside chance that kid's watching, go to hell, kid.
Anyway, aside from that being a theme
yeah.
in all of your reviews and everything, I just thought I'd bring that up because that was very funny to me.
I'm so embarrassed. That's so embarrassing.
Can you do me a favor and just share at least a couple of your made-up words before we jump into Kurt Vonnegut's rules?
Sure. Give me a second. I have to look one of them up.
Well, this week's was shelfie, wasn't it?
It was. I actually just posted that today. Hang on. I'll go to it. I got to read off the thing. Give me a second. Come on, Internet. There we go. Okay, shelfie, noun, a self-taken photograph too unflattering to make it to social networking, which sits in your phone only to be awkwardly rediscovered while attempting to show friends pictures of your cats.
That's awesome. That's really awesome.
Another, like the one I always use as an example, because when you say to somebody, like, oh no, I'm trying to invent a dictionary, and they look at you like you're crazy, and I say, like, oh, okay, like, I'll give you an example, like the word vegan, V-A-G-U-E-A-N, which is a person who has yet to decide what they're morally opposed to eating. Like,
these are great, man.
Yeah, like kindness, K-I-N-D-A-N-E-S-S, when it seems like you're doing it for someone else, but really you're just doing it for yourself.
Right.
There's like little words like that. Yeah, I'm the master of kindness. Yeah,
these are good. Eventually, you'll have to make a like a coffee table book or something with all this in it. It's good.
I'm working on it. Like
it really is good.
After graduate school, like throughout my life, like I've now reached a stage in life where my greatest literary aspirations are to publish a book that will sit on someone's toilet cistern, and I am totally fine with that, because if it's a way to house like what has kind of become this like weird obsession of mine to come up with all these definitions, if that's where it's going to get published and that's where it's going to sit, then fine. I look forward to it. Words that aren't .com, people.
There you go. Okay, let's jump into Kurt Vonnegut's 8 basic rules of creative writing. Okay. So
Now, before we do, though,
Yeah,
see,
yeah.
see, now I'm interrupting you. One of the reasons I asked Andrew to be on the show tonight was because one of my earliest memories, Andrew, I don't know if you remember this, but sitting at Antioch on, like, I think it was the first night that we were there together, talking about Kurt Vonnegut, and you said you had had the chance to see him shortly before he passed, I think, talk on a panel of different writers. Am I fabricating this memory?
I actually didn't get to see him in person, but I did see, a friend of mine went, but that was at the Connecticut Forum. And I've seen the video of it, and it is him and Jennifer Weiner or Weiner, I don't know how to pronounce her name. She's the lady who wrote In Her Shoes.
Uh-huh.
And one other really highly regarded author. And Kurt Vonnegut, who's at that point exquisitely old and extremely crotchety. And Kurt Vonnegut just proceeded to annoy both of them out of sheer delight at how upset he could make these other writers. And it was one of the most inspiring things I have ever seen in my life.
Yeah, I love Kurt Vonnegut. He's so good at that.
Yeah.
So, and so since then, you and I have had like 1,000,003 conversations about Vonnegut and his writing and stuff like that. So I'm bringing him in because I'm going to tip my hat to Andrew in the sense that he's more of a Vonnegut stud than am I. He's read more Vonnegut. He understands Vonnegut probably in a way that I don't, but I aspire to because very, very intelligent. Not only Vonnegut, but Andrew as well. So listen to a little bit of his wisdom tonight. That was my goal. So,
all right.
Yeah.
Pressure's on, guys.
Steve? Yeah, I know, right? No pressure.
Yeah, now I got to sound smart. Uh-oh.
Yeah, exactly.
I just dropped my chair. All right, here we go.
Yeah, so you're off to a really great start.
That's an excuse. That's an excuse for me to get out of here.
Oh, yeah. I think Andrew died. What happened? All right. Rule number 1, use the time of a total stranger in such a way that he or she will not feel the time was wasted. Go.
I'll weigh in on this one. I picked up a book. I can't even remember the title of it anymore. I read it for, I don't know, maybe like 60, 70 pages, 100 pages, something like that. And at some point I had to stop. I thought, you know, I only have so many hours in my day. I only have so many words I can read before I'm dead. And I want to make sure that I'm reading the right words. I'd never stopped reading a book before. I've always finished because I'd been, that had been beat into me. You always finish a book. You always finish a book. And I kind of got to the point where, and the book wasn't awful, but it just wasn't great. It wasn't amazing. And I felt kind of let down as a reader. And I thought, I feel like these last, however many minutes or hours I've put into this book have kind of been wasted. And I kind of wish I had that time back,
You read the whole thing, really?
No, I stopped that book.
Oh, you did? Oh, okay.
I did. I
jumped
off ship.
Was this book called Pride and Prejudice?
That would be one of them, yes.
I will find something to throw at you from the computer.
I will probably duck. But yes, that was definitely one of them. And obviously, it's a well-written book, and there's a lot to be said about it. It was not to my taste, so that's my 2 cents.
I'm going to come right out of the gate and annoy the whole world right now and say that is exactly why I have never read the Game of Thrones books. Which is nothing against Game of Thrones, but I understand a lot of people really enjoy them. But for me, like at a books of that length, over 1,000 pages, if the writing isn't going to be absolutely stellar all the time, I am unable to devote, because I'm a slow reader for that. Just to throw that one out there too. Like if I'm gonna put that much time into it, it has got to be spectacular. And so that's why, I have a really hard time slogging my way through certain texts. And unlike you, Aaron, I have put down a whole bunch of books because if I am not totally delighted by what I'm reading, I will move on to something else. So I completely agree with Uncle Kurt's philosophy on this one.
See, I'm going to read Game of Thrones at some point. I just don't want to do it while it's trendy.
You're just too cool for that.
Yeah,
that's right. I was a geek in high school. And now, I have a reputation to uphold.
Right.
Steve's hoping to jump into the Harry Potter series pretty soon here.
Yeah.
That's right.
I was into incest narratives before it was cool, guys.
Yeah.
I know that for me, I have no tolerance whatsoever for a book that really isn't going to hold me. I will put down a book pretty quickly.
Me too.
I will watch all sorts of terrible, crappy movies. I rarely stop a movie.
That's a really interesting point, because I have watched so many terrible movies and really bad TV shows from start to finish, and I will adhere myself to them. Like, nope, I started it, I gotta watch it. But I won't do that. I won't do that for books, and I actually don't know why that is.
Well, I kind of feel if it's a movie, right? You know, it's 2 hours.
It's only 2 hours, right?
Though I have been known to hang on to a TV series much longer than any human being should do that, just because I feel committed already. But
I watched Lost too.
It was
we
Heroes.
all
Yeah,
did
right.
it. We all did it.
Yeah. But I think there's that feeling like it's going to get better. It's going to get better. At least with Lost, for me, if I'm going to make a comparison here, Lost was well written. That first season was incredible. Just top-notch writing. And then they made the second season, and then they made the third season, and then the fourth season. And at some point I was like, 4 seasons, I'm into it. Like, I have to finish now because I'd already invested that much time. But you're right. These books, now I'm just like, man, there's so much time left that I'm going to have to spend reading this. And there are so many other books that I could be reading right now that I want to read. Or, heaven forbid, actually write something.
Yeah, well, that's a whole other thing.
Oh, don't be silly.
Yeah.
Why would I be writing when I could
That's
be
what
watching
TV's
this movie
for.
I don't like? Right, yeah.
Exactly.
Well, but also, like, I think, like, with Lost, though, like, I really liked the first season of Lost, and then we got to the second season when everyone's worrying about whether or not they're going to push the button, and all of a sudden I realized that the button was just a metaphor for the show itself. Like, I have to tune in this week. Why? Well, because I have to see what's going to happen. Well, what's going to happen? Nothing. Well, but and like, once I realized that, I was like, the show's making fun of me, and I stopped watching it. But for like, with regard to a book, like, I think, yes, like, Heather, you're absolutely right. Like, a movie is only 2 hours out of your life, but also I think so much of the creative work is already kind of done for you, because I don't have to imagine what a character looks or sounds like. I don't have to give them, and I don't have to impart any humanity onto them for them to be three-dimensional, because the director and the actor and the screenwriter have already done all of that. So it really is a very passive experience, and nothing against that medium. It's wonderful. But when you're reading a book, the response, so much of it falls upon the reader, that if I am reading something where I feel the author has left me somewhat ill-equipped, let's say, to really delve into this story, if I'm just kind of floating on the surface of it like a dead rat, then I'm not going to do it. I'm going to move on to something else.
Speaking of moving on, I gotta say,
Nice segue, Steve.
I'll pitch this one. Everyone always identifies the segue. They're like, segue.
That was a good
Segue.
segue. That was a
Got
good
it.
segue.
Transition.
Speaking of moving on, Heather, I'll throw this one at you.
Okay.
And this kind of ties in a little bit to what we started to talk about, really getting someone engaged with your book. One of the good ways to do it, give the reader at least one character he or she can root for. What does that mean?
Well, I think this is a great rule, though I'm gonna not disagree with the word root for so much as say maybe different readers define that in different ways. Because when I hear he or she can root for, I think that we're pulling from them or we like them in some way. And I don't know that I necessarily think that is necessary, at least not for me, because I tend to like really despicable characters. I tend to like the villains and the bad guys, the anti-heroes. One of my favorite books that I've read recently was a short story collection actually called Crimes in Southern Indiana by Frank Bell. And I don't know that there's much of anyone that you root for in those stories because everyone is terrible. But what the writer did was make me care about the outcome. And
Right.
even if it was that the characters are really terrible. I wanted to see what terrible thing that they were going to do and get away with or not. So I don't know that I think of root for as in, I want somebody to win or succeed, but I think it's that wondering how things will turn out.
I kind of have a take on this. I like the way you say that. For the life of me, I can't remember the title of the story, but it comes from Dennis Johnston's Jesus' Son, kind of a drug narrative, if you will, a bunch of stories linked together like that, short stories. And there's one in there where a guy, gets off a bus and he's kind of a peeping Tom. He's checking this girl out inside this house, and he's kind of stalking her, and the whole time he's contemplating all these horrible things that he's going to do to her, and he's going to break into the house and he's going to do X, Y, and Z, and the whole time you're terrified for this poor woman who has no idea what's about to befall her. But you continue reading that story not because you're rooting for the character to succeed, but instead you're actually rooting for the victim, who's not she's
not even a victim
character
yet
in the story.
Yeah,
she's a character in the story, but she's a kind of a secondary character. Definitely not the protagonist, but you, as a reader, find yourself empathizing with her and fearful for her, and so you continue to read in that regard. And then the same thing with those crime narratives. You're not necessarily worried about the characters. You don't want them to succeed in the crimes. You're actually reading because you're rooting for the victims to, I guess, to survive or to find a way out of whatever predicament these people are going to put them in.
I'm rooting for mayhem.
Well, I have
terrible, sad endings. That's what I root for. But
yeah, sometimes there's something that's been posed, some kind of a scenario or situation that's just so interesting that the characters are kind of secondary, and at that point the story kind of takes on a life of its own and becomes, in a manner, a character, because that's what you're rooting for, that's what you're after. I think what we could boil this down to saying is that we have to have some critical element in the story that really captures the reader's attention as something that they care about, something that they are looking at as a promise that they want to see fulfilled.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, to go back for a moment to segue, Steve, back to what Heather was saying. Like, I think if you look at Lolita, Lolita is Humbert is a grotesque human being, and yet I can't. That's a book I can't put down, and I've picked that book up a number of times, and every time I've done so, I've had to finish it. And this is not a person who I like, but I find his language, I find understanding and delving into the gutter of his mind so alluring and so enticing. It is. I feel like the book is. I feel reading that novel is you are being seduced by it. And that's obviously a very charged term when talking about that book specifically. But I think any good piece of literature, whether it's fiction or nonfiction, should entice you, and you should be impelled beyond your will to finish it and to discover that and to see it unfold.
I do want to call attention to something that Vonnegut said. These are his words. He says, "The greatest American short story writer of my generation was Flannery O'Connor, 1925 to 1964. Says she broke practically every one of my rules but the first. Great writers tend to do that." And I think that's one of the points of this cast tonight, is to say which of these can we break and which ones should we not break. Obviously, the first one, you don't break that. But if you think of Flannery O'Connor's stable of stories, there are very few, if any, characters that you can really root for. But you still find yourself reading. A good man is hard to find. We're in the point of view of the grandmother, who, quite honestly, is kind of not a very pleasant person to be around. She's kind of whiny and selfish. And here we are following her, and we care about her toward the end. We're kind of rooting for her, but it's not like we're super invested in who she is. It's just the situation of it.
Yeah. Yeah,
all right. Yeah. Okay. Everyone agrees.
Hooray!
That's something to keep in mind. Is the fact that these rules can be broken. But again, we caution you, just like we've always cautioned you, saying that these rules are here for a reason. It's because very good writers who have gone through the motions and who know what failure is have done the heavy leg work for you, and they've identified these set of rules because they know that the majority of the time you're not the kind of writer that should be violating them. And if you are, it's probably after you're successful, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Generally.
Yeah, you have a lot more wiggle room there. Stephen King breaks whatever rules Stephen King wants to break because he's Stephen King. E. Cummings is E. Cummings, you know. I am not either one of them, so I put it a little closer to the chest.
So every character should want something, even if it's only a glass of water. So what are your thoughts on that?
He says as he drinks water. Very,
That was
very subtle.
very good. That was very good.
I don't know. I'll go ahead and say this is one that should not be broken. As a matter of fact, I would say if you break this, then you're not writing fiction. The fundamental element of fiction is character plus desire plus obstacle. I think if you take away any of those three, you have no story. And so even if we go back to some of those narratives that we were just talking about with the kind of the scumbag characters, if you want to use that term, they all want something. You know, our desires are not aligned with theirs, but they want something, and that's what makes the story interesting, is the fact that they are actively working toward a particular goal. And otherwise, without that, you've got people. We see this all the time. You know, people sitting around being depressed. Like that's not necessarily a story, because you know, depressed people seldom want anything. And so you need to make them active. They need to have some sort of passion that's driving them. So I would say
motivation.
Yeah, motivation. You can't take motivation away from a character and then expect to have fiction.
I know a certain employee, and I can't go into specifics, but let's just say that my employee is rather, or was rather, unmotivated. We had a long conversation, and I poked and prodded and tried everything I possibly could to figure out what this guy wanted, and it was nothing. I just could not find a way to get him motivated. But he had found a girl that he was intending to marry, and when we talked about the potential of him losing his job finally, that was what it came down to. There was nothing else I could give him that would really inspire him. The prospect of losing his job suddenly became the thing that he really wanted to avoid. So even at the very, very end of the road, when you're trying to find out what a person or a character really wants, there is something there. You need to find that, and that's a whole exercise in and of itself, is to figure out what this character wants.
Agreed.
I think it goes along with I think what's going to be the next rule by Vonnegut. Because for me, when it says every character should want something, if only a glass of water, I am thinking motivation, but I'm also thinking about that it's that motivation, it's that desire for something, whether that be something tangible or intangible, that advances the narrative, that drives the story forward.
Yeah, every sentence must do one of two things: reveal character or advance the action.
Mm-hmm.
So I will disagree. I'm going to disagree with this one, only because it says every sentence.
Mm-hmm.
If you really think about that, I mean, I certainly think that every chapter, every scene, right, needs to reveal character or advance the action to drive the narrative. But I don't know about every single sentence. But
well,
maybe
it's like the rule that you want to drop as many adverbs as possible from your writing. They say, you know, get rid of all of the adverbs, right? And then everything will be as it should be. But honestly, every single book I've ever read has adverbs in it. And
Who came up with that rule? How did that rule come into being?
That was me, Andrew. I put that on there. That's one of my 8 rules. That's not true. I'm just kidding.
You might have done so a little hastily.
Yeah. Well, here's my thing, because I'm going to go ahead and disagree with you. Adverbs.
Who are you disagreeing with?
Disagree. Well, with Heather and a little bit with Steve, you know, if the adverb is right, go ahead and use it. But here's the problem: when we're writing, we're going to use 100 adverbs when we need to. That's just fact. That's just first draft writing. We don't know what we want to say until we've said it. And I I am a huge proponent of rule number 4. Like, every sentence must do one of two things. It's got to reveal character, advance the action. I've read plenty of sentences that don't, and every time I do, I get a little bit irritated because we talked about that critic that I can't turn off, that voice. That's especially in my own writing. Reading this, I'm like, don't need it. Don't need it. Don't need it. Don't need it. I mean, I chopped. What did we say, Steve? It was 12,000 words. I chopped out of a novel this summer.
Yeah.
Just because there's so much that we can pull out, and I think that when we do, what we're left with is going to be what's best. I think of it like shucking corn. You know what I'm saying? Like, sure, you could use the husk for something, but when you pull it away and pull all the all the threads and strings away, I mean, you're left with corn on the cob, and who doesn't like corn on the cob? I don't know why I'm talking about corn on the cob. It got really
I think
weird.
it really comes down to the standard to which you're holding the sentence. Because, I mean, I could honestly look at any book and claim just about any sentence as being character revealing as long as, it has some character voice to it or something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But that's not a really, high standard that I'm setting. Does that make sense?
I think it does. I think part of this is it's that, like, it's like what you said. Every sentence must do this. I think anyone would feel somewhat stifled by the authority of that kind of a claim. I think we can all agree that good writing, like the best writing, is lean, and that good writing is about an economy of language. It's brevity is the soul of wit, to quote that old chestnut. But I think if all I can think of is Annie Dillard, and Annie Dillard is an essayist, but when I think of Annie Dillard takes a long time to make the point that she wants to make, because for Annie Dillard, and again, this is nonfiction, not fiction, but when Annie Dillard is making that point, it is the frenzy and the fury and the vomiting forth of all of this purple, beautiful, lyrical language that kind of, it's almost like a prayer, or she's extolling the virtues or the detriments of whatever it is that she's talking about. I feel like if you're trying to convey a sense of wonderment or a sense of awe or some kind of emotional reality even of a character in a novel, I feel like you should have the ability you should have the ability to go and do that with as many words as you feel necessary. And then when you, Aaron, like what you said, and to your point, when you go back and you start pulling things out, I think, to me, but again, I'm a purple writer, I want to leave beautiful words in, even if they're adverbs, if they convey the feeling that I really want someone to feel.
If I may kind of jump in here, I'm 100% on board with you. I agree with everything that you said. But I think my view of it is that those types of passages, especially the lyrical kind of poetic ones, I love how you say it's like a prayer and the extolling and all that kind of stuff, because you sound much more intelligent than me. That to me is revealing character. If that's in fiction,
yeah, that's true.
That is through the eyes of the character, and that is revealing character. It's not just, it's establishing setting through the eyes of the character. It's establishing the voice of the character, as Heather said earlier. I think if the three of us, the four of us, kind of looked at the same passage, we could all agree that these are important sentences that need to be kept. And I'm going to say it reveals character, and you may say it's establishing setting. At some point, it's more of a semantic kind of a difference. But
yeah.
Long story short, when you're in the mind of that character, you are revealing that character.
So then let me say I'm okay with this rule as long as when we say that every sentence must do this, right? That that I'm prefacing it with, and it's okay to let that be a broad definition of what falls under revealing character or advancing the action. Like, that can be a very broad definition, and that also that writers shouldn't feel stifled by this idea that because when we start thinking that every sentence has to do this grand job and it's so important, then we don't put any sentences on paper.
That's a good point, and I would say, because we talk about draft 1, draft 2, this is a draft 2 rule. This is a draft 2 rule. I mean, draft 1, you don't worry about
this. This is draft 5 rule for me.
Okay, that's fair too. So
the irony is, I'm looking at this list right now, and every sentence must do one of two things: reveal character or advance the action. That is a draft 2 or draft 5 version of use the time of a total stranger in such a way that he or she will not feel the time was wasted. The irony is that my beloved Uncle Kurt Vonnegut is kind of repeating himself a little bit in this list. Perhaps he could have trimmed this down a number.
Wow.
Yeah. Look at that. Sure.
Wow.
It's a good. It's a good thing he's dead already. Cause
I'm kidding. I actually think.
Do you hear him rolling over? Do you hear him rolling over?
No. What I hear is the angry thundering of keystrokes as Vonnegut.
So where can people send email to you?
Yeah.
It's aarongansky.com.
He'll make sure that it goes to the right place.
Yeah.
Yeah. So okay. Before we move on to the next rule, I just want to say, Aaron, for your corn on the cob analogy, I have to just tell you that finding the right analogy is a lot like finding the right.
This is why we have Steve.
This is why Steve exists.
That was real good. That was real good.
All right, let's see. Start as close to the end as possible.
I kind of feel like he should have started with that one.
Oh, man.
All right.
Oh, man.
That was called setup. Yep.
Yeah, I'm 100% in agreement with this one. I'm talking with somebody who's writing a book right now, and she just had me kind of critique her manuscript. She's like, where should I start this? And I was like, probably chapter 4. Because the other stuff before that is all you trying to figure out where you wanted to start. And so chapter 4 is where the story really picks up. Let's go ahead and those first 3 were really great for you to write, for you to understand your character. Let's put them away now. Let's get to that as close to the end as humanly possible. We all know the story of Ernest Hemingway. I think it was The Sun Also Rises, where Fitzgerald said chapters 1 and 2 are a little bit rough. So Hemingway just chopped them completely, and everyone says, oh, it's the greatest opening he's ever written. So it's one of those things where the closer you are to the end, the more engaged your readers are going to become.
Do you think that's because the work of fiction will feel that much more immediate, and you're not kind of dithering, or is there something? Because I think it's an interesting rule, and I think it makes a lot of sense, but I'm not, and I think I agree with it. I'm just not exactly sure why I agree with it. I mean, obviously, it's important not to dither in what you're writing, or especially in what you're reading. But I ask you, because you're all fiction writers, and I'm but a lowly nonfiction writer.
You know how when you read a book series, it seems like the second book, at least for me, always seems better. Especially when you read an author who doesn't have to go and reintroduce everything that he's already introduced in book 1, where you just jump in and the action's happening, things are going, you already know the characters, you already know everything that's been set up, you know the storyline, where things are going, and so now it's just action, and it's so much fun. And I think that kind of captures the essence of what's being said here.
I think that makes a lot of sense, yeah.
Yeah.
I wonder, too, though, that this seems like a very contemporary rule. I mean, in undergrad, right, I did English literature, specifically with a focus on British literature, Victorian era sort of writing. So to me, this feels like a very contemporary rule, and one that I don't necessarily disagree with, one that I try to follow in my own writing. But I don't know that this is necessarily like a timeless sort of rule, because I'm not sure that this really applies to some of really great classic novels that I love.
Yeah, I have to agree with you there. See, I'm the kind of writer who really loves doing a good job with the setup, and I also tend to maybe enjoy dumping a ton of history into my writing. And I try to take that out in revision, but I also love reading books where it's just a lot of history and discovery about the world and things where it's revealing character and revealing these hidden plots and finding the answers to old ancient secrets and junk like that. I love it. I think it's awesome. And even though it's slow going for a lot of people, like I'll have my wife read the same exact book, and she's bored to tears. I love it. I just enjoy it.
In science fiction, is a particular genre that I don't think that adheres really to this. I've actually seen this list by Vonnegut before, but it's been titled like his 8 rules for writing short stories and not for writing fiction. And if this were a rule for writing a short story, then I would wholeheartedly agree.
True.
But again, like I said, when it comes to novels, I see its merit. It's one I try to follow. I'm just not sure that it's universal.
I think there's certain tropes in certain genres that definitely have a lot more patience for longer openings. I think of the Lord of the Rings, and pardon me if I cause any anathema, and if I irritate anybody, go ahead and send your emails to Andrew. But there's the establishment of the normal, right, where we've got like a chapter or two of the birthday party and all the preparations, and this is the Shire. And then when the Shire is threatened, then there's more on the line for us because we've seen the life that's there. But you're right. I mean, that was written.
You know what? I'm not inviting you to my 111st birthday.
Wow.
It's not going to happen.
That's hurtful, Steve. I was really hoping to get that ring. The one ring to rule them all. But I think if you wrote that today, there might be like some editor sitting somewhere going, can't we just speed this up a little bit? Can't we just kind of get to the things a little bit faster? You're right. I think it is a more kind of contemporary type of a rule. I'd agree with that.
And by the contemporary thing, I've heard it said a million times. If something isn't wrapped up in 30 minutes. A lot of people, if something doesn't really get going within 30 minutes, it will lose the ADD generation pretty quickly. And I think that's something that characterizes a lot of people in this day and age.
Agreed.
So if you're trying to sell your fiction to this generation, this might be a pretty important rule for you.
Yep.
Which is interesting, though, because if you look at least in YA, when you look at a lot of YA fiction now, fantasy was very big after Harry Potter, and dystopia is currently, I think, very big because of the Hunger Games. And I read Harry Potter. I haven't read the Hunger Games series, but there is a lot of table setting that you need to do when you're establishing. And this is going back to what we were saying about genre fiction. Like, if you have to create a world, you do have to set that table. And I think that is valuable if part of what a person wants from that literary encounter is to delve into a world that they've never seen before. Science fiction. Heather, you had mentioned science fiction. Science fiction hinges on what's unfamiliar. And so, a reader would probably want to explore that. But as for, Steve, you were talking about history as unveiling or unraveling people's intentions or who they really are. And I think that's absolutely apt, and I think that can happen. But also, in that kind of tighter, quicker fiction, a person's actions in a character's actions are really what reveal who they are. And so I feel like if in terms of this rule, it's a genre rule. Like, if you want to create, as much as I don't really like the idea of rules in this, but if you want to create, if you want to set a table, make sure you're setting a table where they're serving food you've never seen before.
Yeah, and knowing your audience, knowing who you're actually writing for is pretty important for really knowing how to gauge this rule. That seems to be pretty relevant.
Yeah, I agree.
Can I just go on record as saying the setting of the table is a much more apt metaphor than the shucking of the corn?
I have another metaphor. I have an analogy that I'm just waiting to deploy. The minute I see an opportunity, I'm going to pounce on it like an ocelot.
Okay, now I'm excited. See?
I know, right? We're all waiting.
It gives us something to hope for here.
There we go.
All right, because the podcast hasn't really been interesting yet, so
thanks.
Is it?
Thanks for asking me to join, guys. It's been a real blast.
Are you eating the mystery almonds over there?
Yeah, these are for those who are just tuning in. I found these almonds, and I don't know where they came from, and I just decided to go ahead and give them a shot.
It's like when my kids get in the car and my daughter finds a raisin in her car seat.
Oh no!
We haven't had raisins in quite a while in the car.
But you had grapes a couple weeks ago.
Oh, yeah.
How old's your daughter? Because I'm at about 7. So
right, yeah, she's almost 2, yeah.
Wow.
So emotional. Okay, be a sadist. This is rule number 6. No matter how sweet and innocent your leading characters, make awful things happen to them, in order that the reader may see what they're made of. Now, this is something my little sister likes to dabble in writing, but she doesn't have what I would say the what's the word that I'm looking for? She doesn't have the stuff to what's the word that I'm looking for? Come on, jump in here and save me, Andrew. You're the guy with the words. What?
Chutzpah?
The chutzpah. There's a good one. Okay, you're not Jewish though.
Nope.
Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah. I'm Italian. It's close.
Yeah, it's pretty close.
They both deploy guilt, so it's okay.
Oh my goodness. Okay. Anyway, she doesn't have what it takes to put herself through that, where she really cares about and she really likes a character in her book, and she doesn't want anything bad to happen to them because she feels really bad for them that they're going to have to go through this, and it just stresses her out, and she ends up putting the book down because it's terrible for her to have to deal with. She says, you know, I like to read books and I like to watch television and enjoy things where it doesn't remind me of real life problems, and writing about things that happen to a character that are bad, I can't deal with it. She's like, because then I have to figure out how to solve it, you know. So she is not good at this rule. But what do you guys think?
I think that's such a lovely thing. That's such a lovely character trait of your sister.
Yeah.
I think it would make for a really good character in a novel.
That you do awful things to?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Who you can then grind into dust. But I think, you know, my experience. Right. So I do competitive storytelling in Philadelphia, and if I have any opinions about that, it's that there's nothing more boring than listening to someone else's good news, because good news, when things go well, we don't learn as much. We don't even experience as much. It's like watching a movie, right? All the work is already done for us. We can just sit back and let the thing happen to us. I am a sadist in that regard. Like, I want to watch someone suffer. I want to watch someone's torment. I love tragedy because in those events, a person's humanity really is revealed. And I don't. Again, like, I'm uncomfortable with the idea of setting rules, but honestly, happy endings. Like, who wants to read a novel about a bunch of happy people? That sounds like a snooze. Let one of them get tuberculosis or something.
Yeah, there you go. That's just great.
Yeah.
You're a terrible person.
Oh, yeah.
Tuberculosis is great.
You know, I purposely just avoid books that I think have a bunch of happy people. I really do look for the books that have the most terrible, you know, situations and outcomes and human beings and decisions and everything. To me, that's what's really interesting. These are the people that I want to know and that I want to know about. If I want to just know ordinary, non-exciting things, I'll talk to the mom in carpool line with me, but I don't want to do that. I would rather ignore her and read the book that's in my lap.
Does she know that, by the way? Have you talked to her about that?
No, I'm pretty sure they all know that.
Okay. How's your day? Really boring since I started talking to you. I'm just going to read my book now. Fantastic.
But I think happiness, if happiness is an outcome in a story, that has to be earned. Because otherwise, then the plot is just making things okay for someone, and nobody's okay with that. When the plot
no one ever reads that book.
No, or not. Well, no one ever finishes it because the minute that happens, they put it down. But
sorry, I keep trying to talk
you go.
Over and over again. I'm sorry. Okay, yeah, I'll say what I'm going to say real fast, and then you can say what you're going to say real fast.
I want to interrupt you so bad right now. Go ahead, go.
I was going to say that you don't really get the payoff at all unless you contrast it very drastically with something very bad on the one hand. Without that, without the yin and the yang, as it were, you're not really going to appreciate the yang.
Yeah. Ugh. Ugh. You know what, Steve? I think we can all agree. We all appreciate your yang.
Thank you.
And what a yang it is.
You know, did anyone read, there was an essay called, like, Modulation in the Moment, Striking a Narrative Balance. It was by Benjamin Percy. that was earlier this year in like Poets and Writers magazine.
Mm-mm.
And he was sort of talking about mastering this art of like the ebb and flow of, suspense and action. And he was talking about the particular scene in Jaws where right before the real terror on the boat, right, there's all this laughter and drinking and happiness, and then bam, right? Yep. And he says that what makes that moment so horrific is it was immediately preceded by its opposite.
That's Hamlet.
And this is what what makes narrative work, is that you do have to have you have to have balance. So if everything is always happy all the time and you don't have its counter to experience, then it means nothing to you.
Yep.
And the more that you can counter those things back and forth, the more each, I think, will matter and carry resonance in the story.
Okay, so Andrew, now I've successfully steamrolled you and prevented you from saying what you were going to say, and then Heather went ahead and just picked up right after me. So what was it you were going to say?
Well, the good news is that I've completely forgotten what I was going to say. But after your successful steamrolling and Heather then going on and making her point, I think I want to say that you're right, Heather. Like that's Hamlet. I mean, right before everybody ends up dead, you get the gravedigger scene, and the gravedigger scene has its kind of gallows humor to it. But the gravedigger scene is really funny, and you get this. It's why one winds up before they punch somebody. It gives you a little bit of extra action. It lifts your spirits before it hurls you to the ground. So yeah, like we always say that a story has an arc, right? It's got its down parts, it's got its up parts. A story with no arc is a flat line. That's not interesting. And so absolutely, I think you've got to, like you said, you have to modulate this. And as much as we all don't want to have awful things happen to a character who we love or create, I think we have to have that happen in order for whatever the outcome of that story is to have been earned and to matter and to resonate with people.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like the 3-act structure in movies and things where you go through a specific arc, and it peaks out and then it drops and then it peaks out, and essentially what you're getting is that contrast in there consistently that allows you to just create the ups and downs that really make a particular movie or a book, for that matter, impactful.
Yeah, I mean,
there's a reason why it's a formula.
Absolutely. It's almost like as though one had an ear of corn, and in order to get the meat of that corn, you have to slowly peel away its many layers and wound it, and then boil it in water for its deliciousness to really happen.
You make one bad metaphor. One bad metaphor.
Oh, man.
Oh, fantastic.
That's amazing.
Just for the record, it's late tonight. We're starting later tonight than normal, and it's... okay.
I'm sorry, guys. This is my first time being your guest, and I'm mean.
You are so awesome, though. It's making the show awesome.
You're doing very well, my friend.
Yes.
Send all of the... Go.
Yeah. Oh,
two more.
Okay. All right. Almost
going to make it. Rule number 7, lucky 7 here. Write to please just one person. If you open a window and make love to the world, so to speak, your story will get pneumonia.
That was quite the pregnant pause, Steve, that came shortly after you made love to the world.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah,
okay.
I don't think that, at least for me, when I sit down to write, I cannot think about everyone out there that might read it. I can't think about, what's the hot thing to write right now? What's the market doing? Because this is just inviting way too many voices into your head.
Yeah, well, I started out writing about magic and, a school where people go to learn magic, and then I had to introduce vampires. And then, then I had to make the school oppressive and dystopian. And they had, instead of Quidditch matches, they actually had like these death matches in a biodome thing where they could simulate weather.
Biodome.
Good times. Sure. Did they choose their factions shortly before the death match?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
If you don't write, I agree completely. But how do you choose who you write for? Because if you write for yourself, then you're just going to do whatever you like, and what you like may not be what anyone else necessarily wants to read. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but it doesn't mean that you're improving or getting any better. You should be your own worst critic in that regard. But how do you decide what that standard is? How do you identify that finish line in that regard?
You know, for me, that's a really good question, by the way, and I think that's really the heart of number 7. And if you ask Stephen King, he's writing for his wife. That's what he says in his book on writing. That's his ideal audience, if you will. If you ask me, I'm one of those weird guys that writes for myself. I'm a firm believer that if you write something that you want to read and then you make sure it's good, and that's the big thing, don't allow yourself to be lazy and go, oh yeah, it's good because I like it. If you write something that you want to write, something that you would enjoy reading, and make sure that the writing is just sublime, the heart of the story is going to be where it needs to be, and that will resonate with the readers. And I often say that every story has a publisher. It's just a matter of finding the right publisher, and that's the tricky part. Because most publishers only want certain things, and if you're not writing that, then you're not going to have a chance. So the idea is, for me, I write what I like to write, and I look hard for the publishers that are willing to share in that vision.
You know, this is not fiction, but one of my favorite authors, he's a guy who writes about productivity and achieving some pretty amazing things very quickly with accelerated learning, that sort of thing. You've probably heard me mention him a couple times, Aaron, and maybe Heather. The author Tim Ferriss, who wrote The 4-Hour Workweek and The 4-Hour Body and The 4-Hour Chef. Yeah, he is when he sat down originally to write The 4-Hour Workweek, he had tried to kind of write a book that would fit the needs of everyone out there. So he was really trying to think about everything he could that somebody in different aspects, different walks of life might think about. And so what he did was to gain a lot more focus is he just imagined two of his friends, these two people who are, you know, young 30-something men who are kind of living in, you know, the either just married or almost ready to get married portion of life, where they're working a lot of hours in a job and you know, putting in a lot of work. These two guys that he knew, he focused on them and wrote it specifically for them, and that's when the book came to life. And he finally had his focus, and he knew what he was trying to say, and that was what really helped him to take off. So
I think this rule is a way of looking at what it's like to be afraid of failing. You know what I mean? Like we write in a certain way if the act of trying to please everyone is, I think, basically a roundabout way of saying that I'm afraid that no one's going to like what I'm doing.
Right.
And I feel like that, for me, and in advertising especially, like I work in advertising, and when you get a job in advertising, you've got a strategy department that tells you one thing, and you've got other creatives that are telling you something else, and you've got your own creative voice, and you've got what everybody else has done, and you have all of these different voices that are constantly giving you all of this input, and at some point you just have to wrap your arms and legs around an idea and hope that it doesn't suck. And I feel like the same could be true of
that's how I feel about marriage.
Well, that's anything. I mean, you've got to basically just decide that it's just a happy choice. Like, you have to say, yeah, this is what I'm going to do. I don't know if it's going to work, but I'm going to go ahead and go for it. And I feel like that is, I can speak for myself, one of the hardest things about trying to be a writer is just having enough chutzpah, Steve.
Right, there you go.
There you go.
To just give it a shot and write to please whomever that person is. And Aaron, like you said, like yourself, yeah, I should like what I'm writing. And then just go for it. And if it fails, it fails. And nobody got any better by not failing.
Right.
I sound so positive, it's disgusting.
Well, If you subscribe to the 10,000 hour rule, then we've all got a whole lot of writing to do before we're any good at it anyway.
Oh yeah.
And we always get better. The more we write, the better we get. So you're right. Absolutely. I like the way you say it though, because it always sounds better than what I can say. So.
Well, he used the corn analogy too.
Yeah. Imitation is the highest form of flattery. Isn't that what they say?
Dude, you don't have to be corny.
Okay.
Oh God.
Let's just chuck that joke and move on.
I think we've all heard enough kernels of wisdom for one night.
Hey, you really got an ear.
Oh, Steve, Andrew's stepping on your toes.
Yeah, his voice is getting pretty husky, so.
Oh. At least you didn't say he was stocky. I mean.
Okay.
Okay, number 8.
Yeah, moving on.
Okay, we're just gonna plow forward here.
Okay.
Okay. Number 8. Yeah. Number 8. Give your readers as much information as possible, as soon as possible. To heck with suspense. Readers should have such complete understanding of what's going on, where and why, that they could finish the story themselves should the cockroaches eat the last few pages. This like really flies in the face of what I would consider to be conventional wisdom, where it's the slow burn, where you hold back so that way the reader has some interest in finding out a secret. That's typically how I do my writing. Is I he mentions Flannery O'Connor and your ending, which is your inevitable. What? Say it for me, Aaron.
Unexpected but inevitable.
There you go. Unexpected but inevitable ending, which is a thing where it's withholding information from you. It gives you just enough so that you feel comfortable, you feel like you're moving through the story, and you understand at least a little bit what's going on, but not so much that you understand every aspect of what you're reading. I don't think that's what he's trying to say, but that's what it seems like it's saying. I couldn't see him saying, give away your ending.
Well,
I think there's a difference between waiting, withholding a certain amount of information in order to build tension, and being vague and opaque, or not giving your reader the information to ground them in the story.
Yes. Yeah, that's exactly right, and that's kind of how I look at it. Is I think of Slaughterhouse-Five, and the end of chapter 1 says the book starts like this and it ends like this, and it gives you the first line, it gives you the last line, and of course you don't understand it at that point. But I mean, how much more can you adhere to that rule by then actually giving the last line of the novel? And of course, as you
maybe he is meaning that you should give away the end before you even start the book.
Oh yeah, if you read any of his stuff and back me up on this, Andrew, I don't think any of the endings really come out of nowhere. You kind of know where things are going.
Well, how many times? I mean, because he's a writer who likes to end the world, and he's done that. He's let you know that the world has come to an end, or whatever paradigm of the world that we're familiar with has come to an end. He lets you know in the beginning, which actually I think does kind of create a sense of suspense. It lets you know, nothing is more suspenseful than walking into a room and knowing that something has happened, but not knowing how the hell it happened. Yeah. You know what I mean? Not every one of his novels, but a lot of his novels open with everything being just ruined, or at least mentioning that everything is ruined in some way,
or will be.
And then we figure out how it happens along the way, shucking the ear of corn that is the narrative.
Yeah.
It's not going to die, is it?
No, it is not.
Now we have zombie corn.
I've got my first literary tattoo. I'm going to get an ear of corn tattooed on my leg.
Nice.
It's going to be awesome.
When people ask about it, say, you wouldn't understand, you're not deep enough.
You should get it tattooed on your ear.
Okay. So bad. Oh, but if we go back to the Flannery O'Connor.
Yeah, I was going to say real quick before you do, have you guys seen that movie Memento?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. That is all.
That is all. And if you haven't seen it, go watch it.
Yeah.
With the unexpected but inevitable ending, the thing about that I like is when you read Flannery O'Connor stuff, you know how it ends. Like, you get to the end and you feel surprised, and then you're like, I shouldn't be surprised. Like, you go back and you read it a second time, and you're like, oh my gosh, like, she just straight out told me. Like, here in page 14, like, or not even page 14, page 1, page 2, here's the answer. Like, I know what the ultimate end is going to be, but as Andrew says, we don't know how we're going to arrive at that, but we do know the inevitable conclusion. And I think, for me, I'm a fan of this rule. I'm not as dedicated or I guess married to it as much as some of the other ones, but the idea is, for me, so many beginning writers fall into the trap of trying to be suspenseful or create tension by leaving out details, by deliberately withholding information from the readers that should not be withheld from them, and they end up just being like Heather was saying, they're vague, and there's not enough tangible details for us to figure out what in the world's going on, and I think that's problematic in writing.
I think sometimes, as a writer, you can do that when you yourself are trying to figure out your story. Aaron, we've talked about this before, about us being more of sort of discovery writers. So I think a lot of times my first drafts are, in fact, terribly vague and opaque in the beginning because I don't know what the hell I'm doing or where the story's going to go. The thing is that you have to be a dedicated enough writer that that's not the draft you're putting forward to somebody. You need to go through, you need to revise and restructure. I know that I took a story workshop last summer at Swanee, and I think I've told you guys this before, but Richard Bausch, he's such a lovely man, and I loved having him, and we're on lovely terms and all, but I will forever be scarred by the notes on my workshop story from him. And the thing I was the most guilty of is exactly this, is that I withheld too much in the beginning, thinking that I was creating mystery, when all I did was do the opposite and just frustrate the reader.
Yeah, that's a real risk that you run. And I've read books where it just keeps you in the dark for so long. It's one of those books where I get that feeling like I feel like this person is wasting my time. And maybe there's going to be some kind of payoff, but in Lost, the rule that they had was, with every question that you answer, you make sure you ask another 2 questions. That worked for a while, but that ends up getting incredibly frustrating. Frustrating. I mean, it's exponential. And I just, when there's not enough information flowing in, when you're not having enough of the questions that you have floating around in your head, we're as humans, especially as a man, we're not great at multitasking. We can only keep in mind, for me, it's only one thing that I can generally keep in mind at any given time.
You can only shuck one ear of corn at any given moment. Right,
but there's so many kernels in there. Anyway, I don't think that really applied.
I gotta go, guys. I'm out of here.
Yeah, this is we're done here.
Anyway, you almost made me lose my train of thought. We're not good at multitasking, and the average person can keep maybe about 4 or 5 things floating around their brain all at once, and then beyond that, you've reached the end of the RAM. Your Stack Overflow. You're starting to create a problem where the last thing in is the first thing out, and it's just, or the first thing in is, anyway, whatever it is, you're starting to forget stuff, like I've forgotten this analogy.
So we believe here that Vonnegut is maybe saying that, don't withhold information needlessly from your readers. Ground them in your story, right?
Thank you for making that very concise.
Because really, it isn't until we know what is going on, like the where and the why and the who, that we can really be into the story. It's the reason why I know that this is a rule people break all the time and can do well, but it's the reason why I don't love pieces that open with dialogue, because I don't have any way of knowing, okay, well, who is speaking and where are they? I don't have any framework.
Yeah.
So I think Vonnegut is saying, like, give your reader some framework.
Yeah. Well said. Well said.
All right.
Somebody had to say it.
Somebody.
Seriously, because I was not. I was doing a terrible job. I don't know why, but the words are not coming to me.
Maybe
tonight.
because, like, for Andrew, it's like 1 a.m. for you. It's midnight for me. I mean,
Yeah.
It's like 9:30 for me.
How's it 9:30 for you when it's almost 10 o'clock for me? We're in the same time zone.
He's
can't see
floating
my
in the
clock.
Pacific Ocean.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's just there.
Excellent. Oh my
Okay.
goodness. Well,
On that note,
yeah.
let's go ahead and wind this down. We've reached our 8th and final rule. We now can. I'm trying to think of a corn joke, some kind of a corny joke.
Just let it go, man.
just plowing
go.
through to the end here.
Yeah, let's just pop this one off.
Wow,
Oh.
that was pretty good.
Okay. All
I'm not even
right.
talking anymore. I've taken a vow of silence.
Right? I think
Can't
Andrew's
even
already
do that.
signed off.
I can't
All
even.
right. So,
Okay.
all right.
We're all thinking about corn puns. Right.
Tonight you're
That's
going to be
why we
laying
all
in
stop
bed.
talking.
I'm tired, and so none of us are coming up with anything. But that's what we're all thinking about right now.
Exactly.
Just wanted to point that out. All
Yeah.
right, go ahead. There we go,
Tonight
wrap it
at
up.
like 3 a.m, you're going to be laying there awake thinking,
Yeah.
"Oh, that's a good one." That's
Yeah.
All right, Aaron.
Yeah, go.
Yeah.
He was about to try to say one. Aaron, how do people get in touch with us, buddy?
They can email us at firstandfictionpodcasts.com. Just kidding, at gmail.com. It's been a while. Facebook and Twitter. Yeah, that's aarongansky.com. You know the routine. I don't, but you do.
Heather, tell us about the Citron Review.
Well, just look us up. It's thecitronreview.com. You can Google us. It's nice and easy. We're also on Twitter. So am I. I'm on Twitter or at heatherluby.com.
And have you had anything recent come out on Citron Review that should be noted?
Why? It's so nice that you should mention it, Steve McLean. Yes, we just had the summer issue go live of the Citron Review. It came out on June 1st, and it is a lovely compilation of flash fiction, flash creative nonfiction, short poetry, and some great photography and digital art. So everyone should go check it out.
Very cool, very cool. All right, Andrew,
Yes.
tell us how people can get in touch with you, how people can follow you, how people can stalk you, how people can go and review you on myprofessor.com.
Yeah, apparently I'm on ratemyprofessors.com. Take him / date him. That's my favorite one.
Right.
I thought you said rapemyprofessor.com and not
Wow.
raped. I swear, this is how late it is.
You know what?
Gone to a
That's
new
gonna
level.
be a website in about.
Oh, I'm sure it already is. I'm
Oh my
positive.
God. Okay, so you
I'm registering it right now.
go get him. Go get on it now. You gotta buckle that stuff down there. Go. You can follow me on Twitter at words that aren't, and you can check out my words. I post a word or two every week at wordsthatAren't.com. Also, we feature illustrations by right now predominantly Philadelphia artists, but frankly, it's open to anyone who illustrates.
What was the deal with the two hands and the fork in the hand? What was that all about?
Two hands in the fork. Oh, that's checkmate. He was the final argument. Boom, fork in the hand.
Oh, okay.
Because he stabbed his hand, and he was like, "All right, go ahead, you pay for it."
I didn't see any corn on the table.
There was no corn on that table. No corn on that table. If you want to illustrate any word that's up, even a word that's already been illustrated, please feel free. You can email me at andrew.panabianco@gmail.com. Good luck. And you can, words that aren't. Check it out.
All right, very cool.
There we go.
That's it, guys. Aaron, sign us out. Let's see if we can do this correctly this time.
With Heather on board again. Oh, by the way, welcome back, Heather. We missed you.
Yeah.
I'm glad to be
Oh, by the way,
back.
tell us a little bit about your head injury before we let everyone go.
No, I'm good. I had a concussion, fly ball. Next time I will be paying attention. No, I'm all good.
You remember when you were talking about the carpool mom and how you'd rather be reading your book? Were you at this game reading a book?
I was not reading a book, though.
Okay.
I've had so many people ask me that. I swear. No, I was not reading a book. I was actually, I wouldn't say yelling. I was, calling for my younger daughter to not be playing so close to the parking lot. So I was not looking at the gameplay, which I should have been always.
Isn't that
just let the kid get
way?
hit?
You're watching out for someone else's safety.
Wow.
And it was just a fly ball. But I'm all good, and I'm back, and at least halfway functioning. So I'm glad to be back, guys.
It's like a metaphor for life right there. You're watching out for someone else's safety, and then all of a sudden you get hit in the head by a fly ball.
It's been a metaphor for my whole year.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Well, thank you all for listening.
Until next time.
Good writing.
All right. That's it, guys. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Tune in next time.
Yes, good night, guys. But yeah, I'm signing off because I am beat.